Alright, alright, alright. Hello, 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 hello. Signals are back online. We're back connected once again. So, to just help everybody out, I'm gonna do a quick recap. Last time on our lovely Our Life, we started step 2, which involved a lot of time skip forward from 8 to 13 years old, and Cove's own distress at the realization that his mom was coming over for the summer, which turned out to be the very next day. Surprise for both of them by his father, which didn't go over so well, honestly. Alongside that, we met the new character, Derek, who is friend of a friend, basically. Cove's dad is his father's business partner, and therefore he comes and hangs out a lot. We also met Jeremy, who may or may not show up in here. If he does, I'm probably gonna punch him because he's a little jerk. I will get him. He cannot hide from me. And we met our cousin, Leandra. Overall, everything is that. We've moved on to the moments, and we'll see what we get to do next. So, the only thing that I'm going to say is that Soiree, this one right here, is apparently the last one of this collection. We got a bunch of DLC ones, but this one is supposedly a good one to end on. Plus, we have ones with just specifically Derek. I think we'll see what we have, because some of these are long and some of these are not. I'm going to do... My plan right now is to do one for each of these. One for each of the sections, with Soiree being the last one. And it looks like we have 2 of them, so we may save both of those for the end. We'll see. But first, I'm gonna pick from the regular stuff. The ones that come with the base game. I think family, because that one sounds nice. The sun warmed your skin from its place in the sky, and you closed your eyes, enjoying the mix of heat with the pleasant breeze that drifted past you. You and Lee had spread out a blanket on top of one of the hills behind your house and had been relaxing there for a while now. Lee had come over earlier in the day, and while a range of activities had been discussed, from staying home to heading down to the beach, a picnic on the hill had been the choice you both settled on. A small spread was laid out in front of you, some bottled water, soft drinks, as well as some chips and sliced fruit. You sat up and reached for a snack, listening to Lee talk about the musical she'd gotten to see a few days ago. It was unbelievable. There was singing, dancing, and crazy stunts, and it was all done right in front of my face. Maybe one day we could go together. I've got to see more shows like that. He smiled at Lee's enthusiasm, knowing how much she enjoyed singing and performing. And she was good at it, too. You had gotten the chance to hear her sing a couple of tunes, and you knew she put a lot of effort into it. Alright. Let's see. Honestly, I feel like Lee is the kind who sings along in the car. Are they good or are they bad at it? Doesn't really matter. They're having a good time, so I'm going to say that it's a talent because you have fun. You also liked to sing and had talent of your own. It was nice the two of you could share that interest. I wonder if maybe we could put on our own show? Think of how fun it'd be! We could perform for our parents and ask our friends and some other people to come watch too. It'd totally work. I like stage fright personally. I think it's fun getting over that and doing it anyway is part of the joy of performing, but I don't know about that. The idea gave you stage fright. But wouldn't showing off to everybody be fun? The thought of an audience made you feel queasy. Not really. Are you really super sure? You have so many skills you could show off to the masses. You can wheedle all you want, but I think I'd rather do something else. Lee seemed a little disappointed, but she nodded and respected your wishes all the same. Good cousin. I love a good cousin. What did you have in mind? The two of you lay back on the blanket and lazed in the sun, throwing ideas back and forth on what you could fill your time with. The beach was nearby, so you could go swimming or collect shells, or find something to do back at home after all. In the end, nothing was tempting enough to move you from your current position, so you continued chatting with Lee and nibbling on your snacks while the sun traveled in the sky overhead. So, how are your neighbors doing? You haven't spoken about them lately. You knew Lee wasn't talking about neighbors generally or down the street. She wanted to hear about the Holdens across the road. It was no secret that she liked to keep up to date on what was happening with them, or more specific. Right now, knowing what's happening with them, they're okay. Cove and his dad were doing fine, and you didn't want to fuel any unnecessary gossip. Lee loved to chat about other people's relationships and would always ask you for the details on people you both knew. Hey, do you want to see if Cove would join the picnic? I like it being just us sometimes. 'Cause I do. This seems like a very good relationship between the cousins, and I like that. Lee lit up, her smile spreading across her face. Yeah, we're the best. You look good in sunset lighting. The sun slowly began to set, the sky turning a rosy pink, then a warm orange. It's too bad Derek isn't in the neighborhood today. I like him. Yeah, he is a good person. I knew you'd think so. He is a good person. He's very family-oriented, and I appreciate that. So how much exactly do you like him? Or maybe there's someone else that I haven't heard of yet? Lee wriggled her eyebrows at you suggestively, and you knew exactly what she was implying. Honestly, I don't think at this point in time my character Lane has gotten an inkling of perhaps, maybe, liking people. But I don't think Lane has, truly figured out that they like anybody yet. Lee, there's nobody that I like that right now. Lee huffed in disappointment, pursing her lips together. Darn. But you promised to tell me if that changes, right? I'll do it for you. I'll tell. 'Cause, she's just gonna wingman real hard for you. Which isn't so bad. It's a deal then. Speaking of crushes, there's this one boy that I think is pretty cute. You leaned back on your elbows and listened as Lee talked about her crush, all in great detail. It was nice to have her telling you a little gossip for once, rather than always trying to get it out of you. Finally, you both decided to pack everything up and head back home for the evening. Upon walking through the front door, you were met by your moms and Elizabeth hovering around each other in your living room. Tension hung thick in the air as the three of them turned to you and Lee, frowning slightly. You had interrupted something. Exactly what? You weren't sure. What's going on? Your moms looked at each other, wondering which one of them was going to speak first. Eventually, Mom cleared her throat and spoke. We were just having a talk with your sister. The room fell quiet again. with no one quite knowing what to say. You felt incredibly awkward, but the silence didn't last long. You don't have to stop just because those two are here. There's no reason to try keeping it a secret. Elizabeth was mad, with her arms folded defensively over her chest, but your mom's nodded in agreement with her. Elizabeth was asking about her parents, her biological ones. The world spun around you at the news. You couldn't understand. Why was this happening now? When you glanced at Lee, she shuffled her feet uncomfortably as though she didn't know if she should be there or not anymore. You didn't know either. Your moms had always been open and honest about the fact that neither of them had given birth to you or your sister, but the details hadn't been fully explained before. It made sense that Elizabeth didn't know a lot about her biological parents and wanted to know more. You just had never thought you'd accidentally stumble into it. Elizabeth looked at your parents expectantly. She wasn't going to let the unintentional interruption derail things. We don't want to keep that information from either of you. It's your right to know your past, but we did want to wait until you asked us to hear yourselves. Well, it's happening now, so... Your mom shared a nervous glance, and Ma took a quick breath before speaking again. Excuse me. I adopted you from the Philippines when you were just a baby. Elizabeth dropped her arms, her eyebrows shooting upwards in surprise. Wait, I wasn't born here? No, you weren't. You could see that your sister was appalled by this information. You struggled even more with what to do or how to react. Am I gonna have to pass some test to even be a citizen? No, you were adopted into the country. We took care of things and you're already a citizen. You have nothing to worry about. I followed all the laws when it came to bringing a child into the U.S. Nothing can be held against you. Elizabeth sighed, placated with the information, but still far from happy. Who are my parents? As people? Why did they put me up for adoption in the first place? Ma softly put her hands over Elizabeth's shoulders, trying to provide some support before she gave her the answer. I'm so sorry, sweetie. Your parents were reported to have died. They didn't go into details on the specifics of how, but you were an orphan. I wish we had better news for you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was torn between emotions, her eyes filled with tears as she threw her hands in the air, settling on enraged. Great, so I can never meet them, even if I wanted to. Not that I could have, anyway, since they lived in another part of the world when they were still alive. Elizabeth turned her back on you and your moms and stormed off, sprinting up the stairs into her room before anyone could stop her. I have to go and talk to her. Ma immediately started to follow her, but Mom gently held her by the arm and shook her head. We should give her a little space to process it all. Your Ma's head hung low, but she stopped walking. With Elizabeth now gone, the two of them seemed to remember you and Lee were still standing awkwardly off to the side. I'm sorry you had to see all that. It's not how I expected it would have happened when the time came. But since it's the topic of the day, Lane, is there anything you'd like to ask? You deserve to know, after all. Lee patted your back and gave you a supportive look. Well, I mean, I figured we were adopted. But none of these options feel right. But I'm also not a person who can put myself in that sort of mental space. Never been in that sort of situation. Don't know how I would react. But I don't think Lane is the type who would give up on information. And if it's being offered freely, might as well learn it, right? I want to know. Both your parents nodded in sync to your reply, ready to talk. I can leave if you want to have things be private. I want you to be here. I can do that. Our friend and cousin, Lee! Everybody. Lee shifted a little closer to you in support, and you were glad to have her there with you. It made you feel a little stronger somehow. You turned to face your parents again, preparing yourself for what they were about to tell you. Ma was the first to speak, her voice quivering with emotion. You were adopted as a baby, but 2 years after Elizabeth. We used a different organization that time, and you were adopted within the U.S. We're sorry to tell you, Lane, your parents had also passed away, and no other family member took you in if there were any. That's why we wanted to wait until you asked. We didn't want to suddenly drop that in your lap. We wanted you to be prepared. We're sorry, Lane. Lee gave you a reassuring squeeze on the arm to show she was there for you. With this sort of topic, it's hard. I could do the crying, but these aren't the people that raised me. Could do that, but that sort of comes across as, depending on how they'd put it, as masking pain or whatever else. Saying thank you is kind. I appreciate that. Thank you for telling me. I did want to know, and now I do. Thank you for listening, Lane. If there's anything else you want to know, all you have to do is ask. We'll do our best to answer any questions you have. How are you feeling now? Are you going to be okay? Lee watched you closely, as though judging exactly how she should react to what was going on. Again, it's one of those things. I don't think Lane would be angry. I can see nothing, and I can see feeling fine and meaning that in the moment. But then having, like, processing time later. But I think I'm gonna go with nothing this time because you never can tell. None of these feel right, so I'm gonna go with this one. You said nothing. You didn't have the energy to reply to the probing. That was kind of an answer to the question in itself. No one seemed to have any words after that. Yeah. I think I want to stay here. You took a step closer to your moms, glancing at them nervously. You wanted to show them somehow that all of this wasn't their fault. The last thing you wanted was for them to feel sad about it. Are you okay? Your moms both smiled at you softly, a little thrown off by the question. We're only as good as you right now. You're a sweet child, Lane, being concerned for your moms like that. It's sad hearing that they died, but I guess because I didn't know them, it doesn't upset me. You're my family. You always have been. Alright, I managed to get to the correct lane that I wanted to be in. Ma came over and wrapped her arms around you, giving you a tight hug. It didn't take long for Mom to join in, putting her arms around the both of you. We really couldn't have asked for a better kiddo. We love you, Lane. More than we could ever say. You're smooshing me! Teenagerdom. Teenagerdom. You all chuckled, the rumble of laughter shaking you as you continued to hold each other tight. I love you too. They both pulled back eventually and grinned at you. You knew then that you all had each other and you always would. A knock on the door had all of you snapping your heads towards it for a moment before you exchanged confused looks. Ma pulled herself together with a deep breath and headed over to answer it, while you hung back with Mom in the living room. You could hear bits and pieces of conversation at the door, Ma addressing the guest happily. You strained your ears to hear more. Hello, Cove, sweetie. I see you've come for a visit. Yeah, hello, yeah. Is Lane here? Ma glanced back over her shoulder at you to gauge your reaction and see if you were up for a guest. When you nodded your head, she turned back to Cove with a smile. They're right here. Come on in. Thanks, Mrs. Woodrow. Cove stepped into the house, giving you a wave. Upon seeing everyone standing around, his eyebrows dipped a little. Is everything okay? Things seem kind of off. You know what? Yeah, we probably did cry a little bit after that, but at least from laughing and having your parents and just feeling things. Because It seems very human to just burst into tears. The tears had finally stopped falling, though Cove looked more confused than ever. With a hand, you indicated for him to follow you to the living room. You sat together with Cove on the couch while your moms and Lee headed off to give the two of you some privacy, and you explained to him what had just happened. It took a little while to relay all the information, but Cove listened intently and nodded the whole time. Hey. A voice made you all look up, and you saw your sister standing at the bottom of the stairs. She walked closer, and you didn't quite know what to do or what she was planning on saying. Would you mind going? I want to talk to just Lane. You can come back. It's not going to be forever or anything. Cove seemed equal parts concerned and skeptical. Leaving now wasn't a concept that thrilled him. I want to talk to you too. 'Cause I do. We have similar backgrounds. Oh, then we're on the same page. She made a little move-along gesture with her hands, and it was settled. You waited until the two of you were alone before fixing her with an inquisitive look. Elizabeth folded her arms, looking you over. Did moms tell you about your parents, too? My birth parents also died. We're the same. Elizabeth broke eye contact after that. Sorry. Why did you want to talk to me? Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at the question as though the answer should be obvious. I was worried about you. I was the one who brought it up, but then I made you deal with whatever was left when I was gone. She sighed, glancing upwards for a moment before settling on you once more. I wanted to ask what happened without everyone breathing down our necks. Thank you for thinking of me, because we're a nice and polite child. Well, technically we're 13. Which means we're technically a teen, as Gravity Falls would say. She stuck up her nose a little bit at that, but her smile was soft. I'm okay, Elizabeth. It didn't upset me. How are you allowed to be that mature? I'm allowed to be both immature and mature in different ways, because that's how people are. The lightning spirits in her voice were quickly gone as she slipped back into a scowl. You have to be born in the U.S. to become president. What? You had never heard that dream of hers before. She noticed your bafflement and continued. I get I was never gonna be president, but it just feels weird having stuff taken away, not even getting a chance at it. I don't like having to know that when I was born I was gonna have a completely different life. So different I can't even think about what it'd look like in my head. I could have spoken another language, lived far away from everything I've ever seen here, and had someone else as my sibling. And then my parents died, and I was adopted, and the life I got became a totally new thing forever. I can't go back to what it was, even if I wanted to. A heaviness settled between you and the person who became your sister. Yeah, I think that's something that Lane would be thinking about, but I don't necessarily know if she would agree with all of the points that Elizabeth made here. You knew how she felt, but maybe not feeling like that too. It was a confusing feeling to have lived one way for as long as you can remember, but not having it be what was originally yours. Elizabeth watched you seriously. She was still trying to make sense of this to you and herself. I don't know why today was the day. Nothing came up to make me ask the question. It was just something I've had in my head for a while. And when it was just me and Mom's in the living room, I kind of said it. Finally, and there you go. She shifted from one foot to another, relaxing her stance just a bit. She also spoke more gently. Learning about them and what happened doesn't change how I feel about our family, Lane. She smirked, fixing you with sharp eyes. I already figured out a long time ago that our moms weren't our biological parents. That wasn't news. I'm just gonna keep listening. She's obviously got more to say. Nothing about the family that I was first born in would have made me decide that this wasn't my family anymore. If you had hoped you'd be free of my big sisterly status, I don't think you're so lucky. She bumped her shoulder against yours playfully, her lips tilted at the corners. You'll always be my little sibling. Knowing me and how she's been acting, you jokingly groaned at the prospect. Oh no. I think I'm really lucky. Chuckling, she seemed pleased with how the conversation had gone in the end. We should let them come back now. They're probably wondering what's going on. It's been a long day. For everybody. He gave her a nod. You can all come back in now. Elizabeth called up the stairs, and you soon heard footsteps as your mom's returned. Lee and Cove came back down too, poking their heads out from behind your mom's. How'd the talk go? Ma gave the two of you a small smile, though you could tell she was still worried. I hope there's no disownment happening down here. Hey, I hope you're alright. Lee came towards you, a soft smile plastered on her face. And are you okay, Elizabeth? Elizabeth rolled her eyes and huffed a breath, and you knew she wasn't used to showing her vulnerable side. I'm doing fine. Lee nodded, though you could tell she didn't quite believe her. Well now, since we're all here, how about we do something together as a family? That sounds like an excellent idea. We should have some fun before the night's over. I love the sound of that! Yeah, okay. Cove is family. He is in here. Why not? You hid the smile that threatened to tilt your lips, knowing that Elizabeth must have been in a good mood if she hadn't even teased Cove for being a part of it. And no matter what she could have said about it, you wanted him to be here. The two of you had practically grown up together over the past 5 years. Who's got a suggestion? It should be something we can do here in the house, with everyone in the same room. We could just put on a movie. That would be wonderful. It's good to me. Me too! Yeah! Movie time. I'll cook up some popcorn. The rest of you can pick a movie. Your mom headed off to the kitchen, and Ma turned to face the rest of you. What do we have in mind? Everyone else can decide. I'll watch anything. Anything but drama. We don't need any more of that today. There were some chuckles at her joke, and he thought about what you would prefer to watch. Not a rom-com. I'm not a horror fan, so I'm not making Lane a horror fan. Sci-fi could be fun. Action could be fun. Family-friendly. Comedy. Depends on what comedy. If we're watching a live-action one, a lot of the times that's not gonna work because the funny parts come from drama. I'm gonna say let's watch non-affiliated animated cartoon. Maybe we should watch a family-friendly film. Cool! Perfect. With the basics settled, Ma took to sorting through the DVD collection. You didn't notice that Elizabeth was sidling right up to you until she was right next to you, arm to arm. Since there's only so much room on the couch, I say it should go to Lane and I. This is our day. Wait, I want to sit with you, too. I'm small. You won't even notice I'm there. Elizabeth raised a skeptical eyebrow, not so sure about that. Ma stood back up with a DVD in her hand and a smirk on her face. I want to sit with the cool kids, too. Surely there's room for one more, right? It might be a tight fit, but we can make it work. You could tell that Ma was teasing, and Elizabeth rolled her eyes at where this was going. She had expected an easy victory. I bet you want to sit there, too, huh, Cove? Ma tapped Cove on the shoulder with the DVD case. He laughed awkwardly at her teasing. I'm not gonna do that, because I understand why Lizzie wants to do the sibling thing. I'll do this one. There's not enough space for everybody. Lee looked disappointed by that, but it was the truth. Mom came back with a big bowl of fresh popcorn, and you inhaled the smell of hot salted snack. What's the skinny? We all want to sit with Elizabeth and Lane, but there's not enough room on the couch. Mom took that answer in stride and pursed her lips thoughtfully. That's definitely a problem. I suppose there's only one solution. Elizabeth and Lane will have to sit on the floor in front of the couch. That way there's spots behind them and on the floor at their sides. Oh yes, that's fair. What? No! The whole point was us getting the couch to ourselves! Sorry, that's the cost of popularity. Elizabeth groaned and crossed her arms over her chest in annoyance. Fine. Lane, you're with me in front. The rest of you can fend for yourselves. There was a mad dash as Mom and Lee raced for the couch behind you and Elizabeth, and Ma put the DVD in the player before joining them. Cove took a seat at your other side on the floor, giving you a small smile. Everyone soon quieted down, and the only sounds to be heard were of hands scooping up popcorn and munching it down as the movie began. In that moment, you couldn't have been more pleased to be part of the family you had. It's always soft and squishy. Always soft and squishy. So, yep. I've got a bunch of family-oriented ones, so we'll do those today. Siblings from the Derek spot. You stretched your arms up high as you stepped into the spot on your wooden floor where the last rays of sunshine landed. The remaining warmth of the day was enough to tickle your skin. You felt pleasantly full from dinner, and the only thing that was left on your plate was waiting for a knock. Derek closed your door as he came in behind you. You'd gotten to spend the afternoon together, and you knew his mom would arrive to pick him up any minute. Thanks for having me over, Elaine. You're welcome. It was nice that you wanted to do the dishes for everyone, even though my mom still made Elizabeth take her turn. Derek pressed his palms together, flipping each hand over and under in a loop. It could almost be viewed as a mock washing gesture, but he was probably being awkward. I just thought it'd be fair. I didn't help with the cooking. Dude, you're sweet. Dude, you're so sweet. Ah, thanks. Oh, Derek, Mr. Manners. Before you could settle in enough to even take a seat, a pounding set of thuds cracked in the laid-back mood. Derek scrunched his limbs, totally inward from the shock. He'd been keeping an ear out for that exact sound, but it was completely unnecessary. Tourists halfway across town wouldn't miss that blare. The racket was followed by the door Derek had oh so carefully closed moments ago, roughly swinging open. Obviously the person on the other side wasn't Miss Suarez, it was your older sister. With a huff and an eye roll, she delivered a brief message as fast as she could spit it out. Derek's mom is here, and our mom made me come get you about it. Okay, we're coming. Mainly because she's in a bad mood already, I can tell. She gave you another roll of her eyes, but didn't waste a single extra word on you. In one motion, she curled her fingers over the edge of the door, twisted around, and yanked the door shut. The books and boxes on your desk shelves shook. Derek's teeth clattered, too. He whispered through the grimace. Man. I'm sorry for that. No worries, it's not your fault. She sometimes gets extra grouchy. Derek's shoulders slowly eased down into their resting position, but his expression was pinched. He began to whisper while glancing the way your sister went. His voice was hushed, secretive, almost afraid Elizabeth might slap the door open again and find out he was talking about her. Do you think it's about the dishes, or... I don't know. You could only give a half-hearted answer. You struggled to understand why Elizabeth acted out the way she did a lot of the time. But your mom is waiting. We gotta go so you can get home. Right. Lane? Derek's mouth opened and closed without saying anything else. He lifted a hand to try gesturing, but dropped that one without it going anywhere. It made you raise your eyebrow. Yeah? His bright green eyes squinted hard into narrow slits, but you could still see the way they darted around. His gaze was trained on the ground, scanning across the floorboards, though everything that had really mattered was probably inside his actual head. I was wondering... He paused again, Derek's hands balled into tight fists. He let out a breath and finally asked a question. Are you busy tomorrow? You blinked. That was all? No? The simple answer still made Derek flinch. It might not be all. Really? I think so. Why? Then he spread his fingers and arms out in a not quite shrug. Would you want to come over to my house for the day? The tone of voice and pose he took was casual in a scripted way. He definitely wanted you to feel like it was totally optional and no problem if you turned him down. You could tell if you couldn't tell if that was the end or just another point in a process, but you were going to along for the ride. I can probably do that. I'd have to ask my mom's. Derek leaned in closer, slowly opening his eyes wider. Some kind of suspense was growing. All right, all right. He dipped his head in tiny, repetitive nods. The look on his face went distant again, the way it did when he was thinking deeply. Then he flung his hands up to complete the shrug and spoke the question he'd been stalling on. Would you want to come over tonight instead and sleep over? We could, camp out in my living room. It'd be fun. Our own little party? Now the nervousness made sense to you. I know it's pretty out of nowhere. If you can't make it or don't wanna or anything, I'm totally cool with it. I want to. Hopefully my moms will let me. Awesome. Come on, we'll ask right now. Yeah, definitely. My mom is waiting for us. The two of you left your bedroom and bounded down the stairs one after another. Your warm greeting came as you hit the landing point first on the floor. Hello, Derek and Lane. Your two moms and Derek's one mom were gathered around the entryway of the living room. Derek reached out a hand towards her and waved it. Hey, Mom. You gave a wave of your own, keeping your hand closer to your chest. After smiling at him and at you, Derek's mom turned her head over her shoulder to speak to your parents. Thank you again for taking care of him. Mom? Derek uncharacteristically broke polite decorum by interrupting his mom. It got her attention and she let him speak. I had something I wanted to ask you and Mrs. Woodrow. Oh? What is it, sweetie? He had the intention and encouragement of all three mothers. On this stage, Derek didn't beat around the bush the way he did before. I was wondering if Lane could come with us and spend the night at my house? Please? He knew your moms well enough to foresee potential concerned reactions, and so Derek sped through his extra terms to make sure that they heard that part before answering. We'd set up in the living room instead of my room, and my parents and brothers would still be around. People could keep an eye on us. As expected, Ma and Mom weren't instantly thrilled. They were shocked by the possibility. And while he was successful in avoiding the first obvious pitfall, your mom still had a completely different apprehension to fret about. That's pretty last minute. You were about to walk out the door. We couldn't have Lane impose. Derek's mom stayed strangely silent after he popped the question. She fixed a stare at her son, crossed her arms against her chest, and shook her head at him. But the shake didn't mean no. It had another meaning that maybe only a Suarez could get. Still, she smiled. We could find a place for Lane tonight if there's no family conflict with that, and they would like to come over, of course. Both of your moms turned their faces towards one another on instinct. They were astounded that Derek's mom didn't mind. Huh. Mom council. Mom scratched her head over it. Derek had made a huge request with no advanced warning, and Mrs. Suarez had 3 children to care for already. It seemed unreasonable to her. For your ma, however, a light spark began to sparkle in her eyes, and when she noticed you looking, she held your gaze. Lane, do you want to go? Timidly, you nodded, and yes was what you meant. Ma wrapped both her arms around one of her wives. I see. I think it would be all right, just this time. Really? Your mom sputtered. Clearly, she hadn't gotten to that page of the script. Mom got an encouraging pat on top of her hand for her troubles. She remained absolutely perplexed. Mouth open, eyes wide. Mom could only process enough to realize that she'd become the odd mom out. She probably didn't know exactly why she was doing it, but Mom turned to look at you. Pack it up, Lane. You wouldn't want to keep them waiting. You snapped your gaze to Derek. He'd done the same. The two of you shared a matching look of astoundment. It was almost identical to the gesture your moms had made when Mrs. Suarez first accepted Derek's proposition. Thank you, Mrs. and Mrs. Woodrow. Thank you. The deal was finalized with a crisp clap from Mrs. Suarez. Pamela's right. You should get what you'll need for the night. You're coming along for the ride. I'll help. Neither of you gave them time to change their mind. You ran back to your room and began to pack in a whirlwind. As you shoved clothes into a backpack, Derek hovered in the center of the room. He fidgeted with his energy that was going unused. Can you get me a spare toothbrush? There's an extra for traveling in the hall closet. Gotcha! He was gone in a flash. He made sure to get the basics and something he personally couldn't go without. Yes, I'm talking stuffed animals or weighted blanket or whatever else. Let's see. Favorite stuffed animal. You made a note in your head to ask your moms to tell Cove where you'd be since wasn't time to explain it in person. But then you remembered a conversation you had with him that morning. He had plans the next day and wouldn't be around for a lot of it anyway. Derek's invite had come at a convenient time. Derek returned. In a sprint, a toothbrush head over his head in triumph. With a grin, you threw it into the overnight bag. That was enough to get you by for a short trip. You zipped it up, hooked it around your shoulder, and went out the door. You'd checked off the final requirements to leave. For the second time in a matter of minutes, you rushed down your stairs in a flurry of steps with Derek close enough that you almost stumbled into him. At the bottom, you came to stand in front of the mom group. We're ready! Perfect. Good luck, kiddos. Have a great time. Gently, rhythmically, Ma ran her hand over your hair. All of her precious hopes for your safety and happiness ebbed from her fingertips into you. Good night, Lane. Take care. Okay. Bye, Moms! Mrs. Suarez and Derek gave their own goodbyes, and afterwards they returned to the minivan that had brought them there. Then, almost unbelievably, you slid into the vehicle with them to go on the impromptu sleepover. The chill of the squeaky leather against your hands and the persistent smell of animal cracker crumbs kept you grounded in reality. Derek bounced against the seat back like a kid on a roller coaster and clicked his belt into place for the ride back to his condo. You strapped in too. You never could have imagined the evening taking you down this literal and metaphorical road, but you were eager to find out what happened next. The sun continued to sink as Derek's mom drove down the highway. When you arrived at your destination, so had night. The condo complex was nicely lit and well maintained. The three of you easily made your way up to Derek's house and went right in. Slipping her set of jangling keys into a nearby wall hook, Mrs. Suarez called out into the hall from the empty living room. We're home! Your unfortunate ears were slammed by the second sibling-caused commotion of that evening. Nico. Derek's back! Nicholas tore out of his bedroom and thundered across the floor until he had his arms gripped around his big brother's legs. Even with all the force a 6-year-old Nicholas could muster, it was hardly even a bump against Derek. He absorbed the impact calmly, giving his little sibling a pat on the head for the troubles. Yeah, we're back! The two remaining boys of the family came from the same room at a snail's pace in comparison to the first, but soon enough Mr. Suarez and Jorge were with you too. Welcome home. Jorge rubbed growing sleepiness from one eye. He took in the scene with undisguised confusion. Why is Lane here? Sup, hello. What do you mean I live here, you tease? I could do that. I could be shy. I'm sleeping over. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of want to do this one for another playthrough, but I'm not gonna do it for this one. I'm sleeping over. What? Mom? She answered matter-of-factly. Lane is staying over with us tonight. Jorge clamped his mouth shut. He might have had something to say about the spur-of-the-moment plans, but was obedient enough not to argue with his mother. Mr. Suarez, however, had a childlike glee in his expression. Oh, very good! Derek cut into his dad's excitement with a reply a little too soon. He had completely normal words to say, but had been put on fast forward. Yeah, it's great! Thanks, Dad! Anyway, we're gonna camp out in the living room. Can we borrow the tent? Derek's hands were balled up into fists and near his collarbone, overzealously, kind of protectively. His father looked down at him with a familiar, serene expression. You knew exactly where you'd seen it before when Mr. Suarez placed his hand on the top of Derek's head. He took care of Derek the same way Derek cared for Nicholas. Of course. And the gesture worked the exact same charm on Derek. His shoulders relaxed and his expression softened shyly. The pounding nerves that had been building faded. Camping! Nicholas shouted without warning. The entire exchange had held no interest for the youngest one until that moment. That's right, Nico. Derek reached down and carefully placed his hands on Nicholas's shoulders to nudge him off. Nicholas went willingly, giddily repeating the same word, this time in amazed confirmation rather than as a question. Camping! With a thumbs up, Derek stood tall. The plan was in motion. Lane, you can put your bag down and sit if you want to. I'll go grab some other stuff. When moving past you, Derek took a second to lean in and whisper a light-hearted reassurance. The little bros will go to bed before we do, and Mom's going to be watching them tomorrow. You're not here to babysit the whole time. He answered with a quick nod. The whole group broke off into 3 sets. Derek ran to his room with Nicholas right on his heels, while Mr. and Mrs. Suarez left the space to the kids, returning to their own bedroom. You and Jorge stayed where you were. Jorge shuffled over to the kitchen counter to sit on a bar stool. He wasn't helping, but he wasn't getting in the way. Then you took your own seat on the couch and got to unpacking. The first thing you pulled out of the bag was your stuffed animal. You placed that on the coffee table for safekeeping. You kept busy sorting through all of it until Derek returned with the goods. 2 pillows were under each of his arms. He had a few brightly patterned blankets draped over his shoulders, and the rope loop of a big nylon pack was hooked around one wrist. Nicholas supported the effort by carrying up one long pillow. He clutched it as tight to his chest as best he could, considering the pillow was about as long as his whole torso. Derek piled up the supplies on the opposite side of the couch from where you were. Nicholas opened his arms wide to let the pillow drop to the floor in a soft puff. It made Derek chuckle proudly. I'm going to put together the tent. Nicholas, George, you want to help? Jorge. My apologies. I'll help. I'm going to put together the tent. Nicholas bounced around Derek in absolute eagerness. In the distance, Jorge pushed away from the counter. Yeah. His expression was flat and wide-eyed, but there was a hopeful rise in his voice when he got up from the stool. You quietly went to stand by the Suarez brothers. Let's do it! The declaration made you, Derek, Nicholas, and Jorge get to work making heads and tails of the tent. Derek yanked open the cinched-in top of the pack while he walked to the furthest spot in the living room. Everyone followed his lead. He pushed the semicircle basket chair up against the edge of the counter wall so the tent could go there instead. Derek dumped the contents of the bag onto the cream rug. He leaned over on one foot while kicking the other in the air to reach over and grab the instructions that fell out with the rest of the materials. He scanned over the steps briefly, but it was only a refresher. Derek was able to get right into the process. Nicholas was assigned pole control. He kept watch on the pile, not letting any roll away, which would pass the tent legs over when they were needed. Stretching the fabric out took the rest of you. You, Jorge, and Derek each grabbed a side and tugged. Derek had to squeeze himself against the tall potted plant in the corner. He snickered at the way the leaves curled around his face. Despite that, you got the tent laid out across the ground. The first time you got Nicholas to pass a pole, it slapped against the wall in the tiny space you were working in. Jorge covered his ears and ducked. Derek snatched the end out of the air before it could do any more damage. The little boy promised to be more careful. He got to keep his job and took it seriously. Piece by piece, the project slowly took shape until it was finally complete. The small, light gray tent sat in its full form nestled into the nook of the living room. All right, everybody, good job! As if he'd yelled into a cave, an echo of his words followed after. Good job! Nicholas threw his hands in the air with joy. Jorge simply smiled, satisfied. You applauded the success. It's a production. Everybody's got to get a round of applause for the production. Derek stuck his fists to his hips and gave the team an encouraging grin. Now we can actually do the indoor camping part of this living room campout. Derek strolled up to the cabinet in the corner. He pulled open the translucent doors to fiddle around with something inside. A poppy tune blared out. He turned on a CD player. Nicholas leapt into the couch and swung his arms in the air to dance. Jorge swayed his shoulders to the bubblegum notes. Their big brother wasn't done yet. He made a beeline for the kitchen cupboard next. This time, the mood settler Derek retrieved was a pillow-sized bag of puffy marshmallows. Catch! That was the only warning he sent before he sent the marshmallows sailing across the room in a perfect arc. Jorge managed to snatch it from the air without a problem. The top of the bag was twisted around and sealed with a blue clip. The opened side was stretched from the process of twisting and untwisting repeatedly. It had been well appreciated so far. Jorge undid the clip and set it aside on the coffee table, his tongue pressed against the corner of his lips as he dug his hands deep in the bag for just the right one. Nicholas tilted over from the cushion and into the bag to fill his tiny fists with 2 marshmallows. He crushed them between his fingers, the fluffy confection squeezing through the cracks. It really was a party. Derek put his hands on the cupboard handle and shouted to you over the music. "Do you like marshmallows?" Plucked one out of the bag and ate it as my answer. The cupboard door swung closed, and there was nothing to obstruct your view of the bright grin on his face anymore. Mom nom nom marshmallow. He finally joined the rest at the base camp, which was the couch at the moment. Jorge, get me one of those too. Without even one warning, Jorge simply flicked a marshmallow at his brother, and the same as before, Derek grabbed it in midair. He bit one piece out of the top edge, chewing thoughtfully. There's no TV while camping, so having a sleepover movie wouldn't make sense. With the swallow of a marshmallow and the snap of his fingers, Derek emphatically declared a grand idea. We'll play an ad-lib game. I'll make up a story, and the 3 of you can fill in some blanks to make it complete. Jorge rolled a shoulder passively. He had finished his first treat and was poking around for another perfect selection. Okay. Nicholas smiled a big, white smile. But it wasn't just pearly teeth. His entire mouth was full of marshmallow mush. You took that reaction as a yes. The little ones were on board. I don't mind. Alright, let me think. We need a noun, a thing you could drive or ride on, a shape, a color, a food, and a drink. Nicholas gulped painfully, forcing down way too much marshmallow goop all at once, but he wouldn't let anyone beat him to the punch. A truck! A truck! Nicholas's eyes were wide. He was practically vibrating from the sugar high mixed with the chance to add a truck to the story. Derek rubbed his back placatingly. That's the ride, Jorge. The middle child plucked at the frayed plastic edge of the marshmallow bag. It might have taken him longer to come up with something than the youngest, but he did contribute an idea. Blue. Cool, we've got a color. Lane? I'll pick the shape. It's a star. Star-shaped. Not just because I live in space. Although it's a little because I live in space. He shifted his focus back to the boys. Derek's expression and the entire way he carried himself was different when speaking to them. It reminded you of a teacher interacting with his students. Jorge? Nicholas? Give me some more words. Orange! Nicholas, I picked the color. His words were both a low mumble and a higher-pitched whine that was paired with a crinkling noise coming from the marshmallow bag Jorge had started twisting in his hands. Derek swooped in to defuse the situation. He put his arms between the two brothers, physically keeping things separated. Don't worry, that's not the color, it's the food. Jorge huffed. Nicholas grinned single-mindedly at his big brother, oblivious to the trouble he almost caused. It's another thing done. We need something else now. Apple juice! Perfect. There's a drink. Derek continued to warmly watch over his little siblings, but the words he spoke were for you. Lane, you're giving us the last one. A noun. Yeah, the noun should be... We're gonna do treehouse. 'Cause I like that. His expression somehow softened even more. Awesome. Derek pulled his chest back and folded his arms. He smirked, brows angled and eyes squinted. Now I can now tell you the story of Baby Castle. Nicholas stamped his feet rapidly into the couch. He was absolutely squealing from the premise alone. Baby castle? Yes, that's right. In a big open field there was the stone fortress that was Baby Castle. Everyone who lived there was a little baby, but they didn't need any adults. Their greatest treasure was a giant golden tree house at the center of the courtyard. They were always vigilant to protect it from the greedy hands of grown-ups. Jorge snorted. His mouth and cheeks began to pull upwards. Then one day, someone came to the gates of the castle. On their truck, there was a man, not a baby, or even a kid. He had a star-shaped head and a fancy top hat. He was knocking on the door, demanding to be let in. They were just babies, and they needed supervision. It was a blue alert, and the guards were rushing to their stations. The first line of defense was their orange catapult. It was loaded up and then fired. Bullseye! The orange knocked the top hat off his head, but the star-faced man wasn't deterred. He used his giant grown-up legs to climb over the wall. There was panic in the castle. He had to be after their golden tree house. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot with precision. His hands had gone up in front of him, with his palms facing forward. He looked like he was the goalie of a soccer game. But the babies weren't beaten yet. The squirt gun battalion lined up, and as soon as the adult stepped foot on the other side, he was pelted with apple juice. He stumbled back, and the gatekeepers opened up the door while he was blinded. He got pushed right back out and back onto his truck. The guards gave one more shove, and the man with his truck and without his hat slid down the hill and far away. The castle was saved. The babies in their treehouse were still free. Hooray! The end. That's cute. A matching pair of cheers filled the air. Nicholas and Jorge were thrilled by the yarn Derek had spun for them. It honestly impressed you how well Derek could improvise. He was a guy of many talents. The living room campsite blowout kept rolling from there. Derek turned up the music louder, making sure to skip any track that didn't fit the mood. Jorge and Nicholas swung across the floor to dance. They threw marshmallows in the air and tried catching them with their mouths, and when that got old, they tried to see who could fit the most in their mouths at one time. Derek grooved to the beat and tapped his toes around as he collected the treats they missed, picked up the pillows they knocked to the floor, and patted their backs when their stuffed faces made them cough. But he wasn't only Mr. Responsible. Derek took his own shot at the marshmallow mouthful competition and blew his little brothers out of the water. You dance, we boogie. You shook it to the left and shimmied to the right. Nicholas took a hold of your hand and we wiggled your arms together. The chain was extended when Derek took Jorge's hand and nudged him to take yours. It made a massive wave that ebbed through the whole group. As the night continued, Derek moved on from the party hotspot to chill out inside the tent. He was on his side, propped up by his elbow. It took a few minutes for Nicholas to notice his brother's disappearance from his sight lines. You knew the moment it happened. He'd been bouncing from cushion to cushion on the couch, but came to a firm stop, sticking his feet deep in place. A helpless pout flickered on Nicholas's face before it almost instantly curved into a sly grin. Nicholas knew where he could find his favorite person. He leapt from the arm of the couch to land at the entrance of the tent. From there he sprung forward like a shot straight into Derek, shoving him over onto his back with an oof. Derek didn't get up. He flopped his arms out and laid motionless. 3, 2, 1. Derek was down for the count. Nicholas was the winner. Claiming his victory, Nicholas curled up on Derek's flattened chest. He tuckered himself out. You sat stretched out on the floor near the tent. Jorge wanted to sit cross-legged next to you. He had one shoulder in the tent and the rest of him was out. Derek's eyes drooped closed and he heaved a satisfied sigh. I'm too old to keep up with you bros. You can party way harder than me. He could still muster enough energy to move his hand over his brother's fluffy marshmallow-speckled hair. The little boy snuggled his cheek into Derek's jersey even more. Still cross-legged, Jorge took hold of his ankles and rocked himself gently back and forward. The childlike position conflicted how contemplative his next words were. I wonder what things will be like when we really are older. The brother with the most days behind him smiled softly while his eyes remained shut. That's easy. 10 years from now, I'm gonna be a famous athlete. Nicholas will obviously be the cheer captain at all my games. Derek earned a squealing giggle from Nicholas. He even kicked a leg out like a puppy who got a tummy scratch. Jorge, you'll be my career manager. Jorge stopped his movements, sitting a little taller. A smile pulled at the edges of his mouth.
Obviously.
Lane will be there too. That perked your own interest. I'll take care of the merchandising. He snickered along with your contribution to the master plan, me and my sculpting skills. Exactly. Then his voice drifted off quietly. And the four of us would all be neighbors. He thought that sounded wonderful. He wanted to live next to you. He wanted you to be part of his future. Derek, Jorge, and Nicholas. You glanced at each of their faces and felt glad you got to be here. You went to different schools, lived in different towns, had different families, but sometimes you were able to share your worlds with each other. And maybe someday Derek's story would come true, and you'd be even closer. But that time wasn't now. And all too soon the Suarez parents reappeared to take their younger children off for bed in their own room. Despite being nearly asleep already, Nicholas grasped Derek's shirt when his dad reached in to pick him up. Derek kept one hand on Nicholas's head and pressed the other against the floor, slowly shifting into a sitting position. Nicholas's vice-like grip made it easy to do without either of them falling over. When he was upright, Derek collected his little brother in his arms fully and shuffled out of the tent. This is pretty cool, huh, Nico? Usually I'm all the way in my room, but tomorrow all you'll have to do is open the door, look down the hall, and I'll be there. Derek whispered soothingly on the path to the back bedroom, putting to bed not just the delicate bundle he carried, but also the likely resistance the boy would have put up. Jorge trailed behind his brothers. He didn't need the extra help, but Derek stood in place. He didn't move until the middle one could come up by his side. Altogether, the three Suarez sons went through the door. He waited in the living room quietly. Maybe a minute or two passed before Derek switched off with his parents. He came out empty-handed, and they went in. He took wide, tiptoeing steps over to the campsite. His sleepiness from before was wiped away by a second wind of excitement. Derek made it back to the tent and put a hand to his mouth, watching the hall like a hawk for any sign of his family. We've got to change into our pajamas, but we don't have to go to sleep for real. You got to your feet, his eagerness rubbing off on you. The both of you quietly bustled between the bathroom and living room, finishing all last-minute prep. Derek's parents lingered at the edge of the hallway until both you and Derek were completely set. PJs on, teeth brushed, the works. Good night, Derek and Lane.
Night.
Sleep well. Enjoy the great outdoors of the living room. Night, Mom. Night, Dad. Good night. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Mr. Suarez hit the light. The condo blinked into darkness. There were footsteps, silence, and the click of a door opening and shutting. His parents had returned to their own bedroom, this time to turn in for the rest of the night. With the opening and intermission over, part 2 of the Derek and Lane at-home adventure out could begin. Derek went from sitting up perfectly straight, ready for some non-existent interview, to dropping forward onto his stomach. He squirmed around using his elbows. The effort fluttered the tent and blankets, making a soft crinkling sound. When he had positioned himself facing you, Derek rested his head against the top of one fist. He grinned keenly. The rest of his family might have been right across the condo, but this was still the first chance to talk between the two of yourselves since the sleepover started. He'd been waiting for it. Hey, Lane. His cheeks lifted high enough to push up the bottom of his eyes as he whispered with a childlike sense of secret sharing. I was wondering if we were being completely serious, what you would want to be doing in the future. Do you have, I don't know, a goal or a dream? Does Lane have a dream for the future? Yeah, I do think Lane has a dream for the future. Yeah, I do. Hopefully I'll be able to create things. Yeah. I bet it'd be amazing. I want to learn a lot. Knowledge is power, after all. I want to be very skilled. Same. I'd like to help people. You're so nice. It would be amazing to fall in love. Yeah. I really want to actually feel like I'm a responsible adult. Oh, that's a good one. And that sort of thing. Cool. Thanks for telling me. Derek contemplatively rolled over onto his back. The arm that had held up his chin now tucked under his head for support there instead. His eyes never broke away from yours, despite flipping upside down. He could move as freely as he wanted and was taking full advantage of that. When his siblings were around, he had to work with 8 limbs and 2 heads, thanks to Nicholas's literal attachment to him. And that got your train of thought fully on the track of siblings. You opened your mouth and said, I wish my older sibling was as nice as you are. Derek made a valiant attempt to nod along from his lopsided position. Elizabeth isn't a super helpful role model. Sorry if that's mean. It's true. He covered his mouth with his free hand to stop his snickers from getting too loud. Do you ever wish you had a big sibling? His gaze trailed away from yours for the first time so he could stare at the tent ceiling. I don't think so. Maybe I've never needed a big sibling because I already looked up to someone for that. My dad. Oh, that makes sense. The air in the near complete darkness had felt warm and comfortable, but the atmosphere began to change. It was too subtle for you to say exactly why, but enough for you to notice. Lane? Derek reversed his position again, getting on his stomach. His arms were crossed over the floor in front of him, and he rested his cheek down against them. Derek's eyes were on the ground, too. Would it be weird to ask if you're having fun? I'm having fun. I am. I get you have siblings, and it's a whole package deal. I can't have you without your siblings, especially if I'm coming over to your house for a sleepover. And your siblings are cute, man. That's great. He clicked his heels together in a rhythm, soft taps and rustling over the blanket. 1, then 2, and 3, 4 in quick succession. And it repeated again. Derek mumbled into his forearm. I was really hoping this would be a nice time. It's nothing. But Derek sprung up on his palms, bringing his head up to your level and beaming directly at you. Have you watched anything cool recently? Jorge and I have been showing Nicholas a lot of the great stuff he couldn't see before because he was too little when they came out. He'd kicked the ball in a new direction and had too high of a defense for you to maneuver it back. But that was alright. You could talk to Derek about anything. You and Derek continued to bounce from topic to topic. You quietly spoke your thoughts out in the air while hidden away from the rest of the world in your camp. It went on through the night until, before you realized it, your eyes were opening to the morning sunlight. But there was no peace in Derek's household. It's morning! After giving his war cry, Nicholas barreled from his room and catapulted himself into the tent. Derek wrestled with Nicholas on the blankets in a tickle fight. It was a memorable way to begin the day. For breakfast, there was a cupboard full of different cereals and instant oatmeal packets to choose from, plus fruits, berries, and nuts to top it with if you wanted. Each bowl was prepared to its owner's specification, either by themselves or by Mrs. Suarez. For those too little to reach everything, you got cinnamon oatmeal and ooh. peanut butter, strawberries, and blueberries. That was everything. Silently, Jorge pushed towards you a small glass jar of ground cinnamon, in case you wanted to top your oatmeal with some extra. That's what he had done after adding plenty of bananas. You glanced down the hallway, expecting Derek's dad to come in and join the family soon, but Mrs. Suarez let you know how Mr. Suarez very sneakily went past you a couple hours ago when you were sleeping. Derek swallowed a spoonful of peach oatmeal with blueberries to note how his dad had to commute. Derek's mom nodded before moving the conversation forward. I'll take you home in the evening. The younger ones can stay with Mr. Suarez, then. You'll have a peaceful ride. Your moms know it'll be a little late. We worked it out yesterday while you were packing. And I'll be out running errands until then. I will be bringing the kids. You two can enjoy your time however you choose. Is that fine? Derek stuck his spoon towards the ceiling and gave you a thumbs up from his bar stool. Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Suarez. Derek put his other fist on the counter. Double thumbs up. Soon you learned another new thing about Derek's family. His dad commuted very early, and all hands were tasked with cleaning up whether they were guests or not. The five of you made quick work of breakfast. Then Mrs. Suarez, with some assistance from Derek, corralled Jorge and Nicholas into the minivan to act as helpers during her daily tasks. Jorge could properly fulfill that role, while Nicholas was more of an honorary helper who still needed more support than he gave. The title was still exciting enough for him to release Derek for 1 minute so that he could be strapped into his car seat for the drive. From one job to another, you and Derek were left alone to put the living room back into its proper order. First, your belongings were collected and put aside to make sure nothing got mixed in with the other supplies. The blankets were stuffed back into Derek's room and the spare closet, and any loose marshmallows that were discovered to have escaped being devoured and ended up on the floor were now thrown into trash. Your campsite became a hollow shell of what it once was. It had ended so quickly, but a short adventure in the great outdoors of the Suarez's living room was better than none. It was still a minor miracle that you got to come. You didn't forget that. Lastly, the two of you worked as a team to break down the tent itself. You slipped out each of the poles, retracted them into their smaller size, and began to get them packed away into the sturdy bag that came from the night before. While folding up one of the legs, Derek lightheartedly chatted with you. I'm so excited. The whole day. We can do anything before you gotta go walk to the park, watch a movie, get food somewhere. He hummed along with a bounce in his pose. He was having plenty of fun just doing regular chores with you. The good mood was infectious. It's great. I was just thinking about how I was surprised my mom's let me come today. Out of nowhere, Derek twitched like he was hit by a bolt. His hands flipped over protectively and the pole fumbled out of his grasp. It clattered against the wooden floor. The sharp sound made Derek wince. He gave a meek apology while the leg rolled back against his sneaker just as pitifully. Sorry. Derek bent his knees and gripped at his shirt's edge on the way down before he reached out to pick up what he dropped. What were you saying? That was pretty off. You didn't miss the blaring sign, complete with warning sounds that something was up. But he obviously wasn't comfortable, so you tried to let it go. I was just talking about my mom's. Usually they're pretty strict about sleepovers, and I can't do it out of nowhere. It's a planned thing. Having it be at camp out in the living room must have helped a lot. You gave a bit of a shrug and scanned around for another piece to put away. Brother, did you pre-plan this? Did you actively pre-plan this and just not tell me? I'm not mad, I just want to know. Oh yeah, that makes sense. They are kind of like that. Derek fiddled uselessly with the gray rubber foot at the end of the pole. He was pretending to keep busy. You wondered if you remembered what the two of you were supposed to be busy with. It wasn't going away whether you ignored it or not. Did you think they didn't like you, or that I meant something else? No, forget it. It's dumb and it doesn't matter. He threw the words at you. It was final and way harsher than you expected from Derek. The sharp edge of it wasn't for you, and that part was directed towards himself. You'd never slept over at his house before. That'd been your guess for why it might have been a little awkward. There was clearly more to it. You frowned. Derek, what's going on? His brow angled at the same time. A tight bend formed in the tent leg. The way he twisted it between his hands was too much for the thin piece of pole. He didn't say a word. We're always encouragingly smiling at people. He sealed his eyes tight and dropped the leg, on purpose this time. Despite all the effort it took him to ask you to come in the first place, that paled in comparison to this. Suddenly it seemed like he wished you were anywhere but right there. I can't tell you. Derek's voice was an impotent whisper. You'll think I'm the most annoying guy in the world. I am the most annoying guy in the world. It was such a bad idea. I was sneaky and judgy and I shouldn't have bugged you and I already did and it's too late. Oh boy. Derek's posture pulled closer and closer together as he spoke, his fists tapped against the front of his chest and his knees bent inward. The pressure building inside was exerting a real force on him. What if you don't want to be friends anymore? The last part almost disappeared before you'd had a chance to hear it. He looked small and lost. That's never gonna happen. The tension kept compounding, causing cracks where more words could slip through. I had a reason why I invited you when I did, why it needed to be now. Yeah? Even though his eyes cracked open, Derek wasn't looking at you, but finally he sucked in a breath and took the plunge. Lane, today is Father's Day. Your jaw dropped. Well, I'm not going to say that Lane doesn't know what days it is when the holidays are. You knew what day it was, but you couldn't have guessed why that was Derek's motivation. You put it together immediately, though you were still stunned. You could put it into words. You thought I was going to be sad because it's Father's Day and I don't have a dad? Derek lowered his head and pressed his shoulders up to his ears, trying to hide from the sound of it. Well, I wasn't thinking for sure that you'd be sad. I didn't know how you were going to feel about any of it, and that was what was chewing at me. Oh, you're sweet. Oh, you're a sweetie pie. Oh, sweetheart. Derek poured out words one after another, trying to explain himself and the conflicting feelings he had bottled up the entire time. The floodgates had been opened. It's not like I was around last year when this happened. I couldn't help wondering if it was a normal thing, or a good time, or a low point, or whatever. But I don't live in Sunset Bird. I can't walk on over like it's nothing to check. I had to come up with some other dumb way to be around. Oh, sweetie, you're doing great. Derek's speaking pace slowed, but his blinks picked up speed. His rapid flow of words went from explanation to admonishment. It was enough for him to choke on. But that's stupid, because if you actually wanted me to be anywhere near you today, you could have asked yourself. And your moms are great, better than most dads, and you've got Elizabeth too. And I shouldn't have made a whole big deal out of it because I made stuff up in my head. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And then it went bone dry into silence. Derek dropped his arms over his sides. Dropped his arms to his sides in defeat. He could only look at you out of the corner of his eye. Honestly, I'm like, bro, you're so sweet. I'm gonna grab his face. You couldn't help yourself. You squished his face between your fingers and gave them a pull. Derek's caution turned to confusion. Lane? It sounded so silly with his lips stretched out. After an extra squeeze, you let him go. That's not dumb. Really? You're not going to tell me to call your moms to come get you and walk out the door and never talk to me again? Is that what you thought was going to happen? Maybe? I figured you'd say I'm at least a pain. I won't say that. Derek crumpled over, gripping his hands against his legs and releasing a massive sigh like he'd finished a marathon. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry still. I should have just asked you instead of creepily making you come to my house so I could watch and see if maybe I could figure it out without having a normal conversation. I understand. It's hard to ask that kind of thing. The emotional exhaustion from carrying that stress on his back really had taken its toll. Derek crouched completely and plopped onto the floor. You eased down to sit next to him. He tucked his legs up against his chest and tapped his knees shyly. He was the last kid waiting to be picked for a team on the playground, and you were the captain who could include him. Would you want to talk now? I think that'd be good. A ghost of a smile appeared on Derek's face. It didn't compare to the ear-to-ear grin you were used to, but it was enough to make everything feel a little more normal, a little more right. I could tell by all the ads that Father's Day was probably today. I didn't care, though. We don't celebrate Father's Day. It's never been a thing in my family. Derek nodded quietly in understanding. It's nice that you cared, though. I know I have someone who really worries about me, and that's pretty special. Derek's face shifted to the side, but not enough for you to miss the redness tinting his cheeks. Thanks, Lane. Derek waited there on the floor silently, still curled up in a ball. If there was more you needed to tell him, he wasn't going to miss it. I hope this didn't ruin your own Father's Day celebration. No way! He slapped a palm against the hardwood floor that made the outburst even more startling. Derek stared at you with complete seriousness. All he'd want is getting a card sometime, and my bros might get him little kid kind of gifts, a flower from the park or a Lego guy or something. You being here too is not, for sure not gonna ruin it. Don't worry about that. Dad only wants a party all day on birthdays, but you could still come to those anyway. That's good. Nothing would have made you feel worse than having Derek throw away his and his family's celebration to try and give you one. But it was easy to believe what he said. He wasn't placating you. Derek wasn't a liar, even if sometimes he didn't tell you every thought and feeling in his head. What is it like having a dad? Is it different from how it's like with your mom? Oh! His parents weren't there, but his gaze automatically went to the hall that led to Mr. and Mrs. Suarez's room. You had no idea what was on his mind, so you needed to wait for him to say it. Derek ultimately shrugged one shoulder and tilted his head back to you. It's kind of different. Mom is really a mom, and my dad's a dad? You blinked at him incredulously. Sorry. He scratched at his ear. Derek heard the way his own words sounded just as well as you did. I think what I mean is, like, Mom is nice because she loves me and I love her, and it's great. We can just be together, and it's like I don't have to grow up so fast. It's okay the way it is. That's not exactly like how it is with Dad, because I want to be like my dad, and I'm not. I want to get mature and responsible and do more. I don't feel like I'm good enough when I've got to compare myself to him. Derek blinked. He'd caught himself losing track of the topic. It was going where it wasn't supposed to be, and Derek put a stop to it. But it's not bad. It's not like he's trying to make me feel that way. He pushed a couple inches off the ground using his heels and tipped backwards a bit. Then fell into place again. Derek looked like a tiny rocking horse. A slight grin cracked between his lips as he swayed. And I bet a lot of kids don't have that kind of thing about their dad. They want to be like their mom or both their moms. I think you're already good. Thanks, Lane. I want to be like me. I think that's perfect. Derek's words then slowed and stumbled. He squinted his eyes as if looking at you was blinding. It was the way he spoke when he forced himself to confess something he wasn't planning on admitting. Also, well, Lane, since we're kind of talking about Mom and Dad, I kind of want to tell you they do kind of know why I wanted you to come over. Didn't tell them exactly, but yesterday they somehow figured out I was worrying, and before I could do something to stop it, they put it all together. Don't know how parents do that. They wanted to help me help you if you needed it, but they didn't have any idea that I was just being nosy and that you didn't give me any real reason to worry. I understand. It's hard to pretend something is nothing when it's not, and it was really important to you. It was, for sure. Thanks. I'm glad I've got two moms. I love them. Definitely. I get that. They're really good. That was an understatement. Your moms are some of the best people in the world. Mentioning them took you right back to the fun times you'd had with your family. My moms are happy sharing Mother's Day with each other for the parent-based holiday. Though one time Mom joked about how they could switch off. One could be the actual Mother's Day to herself and the other could make Father's Day the other Mother's Day. And despite Derek's lingering awkwardness, Mom's joke still pulled some snickers from him. She would have been thrilled to know that. That's compromise. Really, what a missed opportunity to not actually do it. Totally! But that's why we've never done anything for today. Your thoughts drifted away from Derek, and even from you. They floated across the condo, out the window, and off into the vast summer sky. As the silence settled between you, Derek plucked at his shoelaces and chewed on the insides of his cheek uncomfortably. When you felt the need to fix everything or make it all better, it was a major hitch when it was not your problem to solve. The air conditioner whirred in the background. Through your fuzzy-feeling mind's eye, you could picture your moms and your big sister. Then your brain and body suddenly snapped together in full focus. Wait, what about Elizabeth? At the mention of her name got the same instant reaction from Derek that you just experienced. His eyebrows lifted and his mouth opened soundlessly in a small O. She acts like she's over everything, but I remember back when we were little kids, she would get mad on Father's Day. Maybe that's why she was so aggressive yesterday. She didn't have friends who were coming over or anything, and Mom's had work, and now I'm gone too. Derek looked hard at the front door. Was he expecting her to walk through it, or was he planning on running over to Sunset Bird to check? You had no idea. Shoot. I thought there might have been a chance of that. You tried to consider the possibilities as best you knew with what you knew. Hey, we could call her. I'll do it if you'd feel weird about it. You'd actually do that? Definitely. Here I go to the phone. Alright. Derek unfurled himself, got off the floor, and trotted to the hallway with purpose. Mounted right where the living room narrowed into the hallway, set against the front wall, was an off-white telephone. The phone at your house was wireless. Derek's had an elastic looped line that kept the receiver from going more than a couple feet away from its base. Visions of Nicholas launching a cordless phone into the air purely for his own entertainment made their way across your mind. The option the Suarezes went with was the most practical for the family. Your sibling, however, would throw a fit if she couldn't chat with her gal pals in private. Elizabeth. You wondered what she was thinking about right now. But you wouldn't have to imagine for much longer. Derek didn't waste any time punching in your number. He had it memorized. There had been so many times in the past that Derek used that very device to call your house so the two of you could chat about your lives and make plans and whatever else. You'd ended up on the other side of things and for once got to watch him go through each of the motions he used to connect with the Woodrow home. He stood with his back perfectly straight and pressed the phone to his ear as he waited for the solitary person, miles away from where he was, who could answer on the other end. Awkward seconds ticked by, one at a time. You could vaguely hear the ringing coming from the receiver bouncing off the hall wall. But then a wide, eager smile pulled all the way across Derek's face. She had picked up the phone. Hey, Elizabeth! It's Derek Suarez. Lane is here at my house. As chipper and polite as Derek tried to be, there was an obvious strain in his voice. He tucked a finger through one of the rubber-coated loops and twisted the stretchy phone line over and over until it wrapped all the way from his wrist up to the tip of his hand. Did he do that when he was talking to you? I was wondering how things were over there. You silently attempted to fill in the other half of the conversation, based on how he was reacting and what you knew about your sister. She definitely asked what on earth he was calling her for. No. It immediately got harder to grasp the context. Elizabeth probably lobbed another question, but it could have been anything from, is Lane dead, to, did you have a nice sleepover, wink wink? Derek's wide, panicked eyes gave you the impression it wasn't going well, whatever it was. The words on the tip of his tongue were swallowed like a bitter pill. He grimaced at the wall in front of his face and did nothing else. Derek, what happened? Derek sighed deeply and clicked the receiver into the base with a limp-wristed nudge. He directed an impressively unimpressed stare at the phone. Unfortunately for him, Derek couldn't send that look over a phone line even if it had been dropped. When Derek turned to face you directly, he fought against his deflated appearance with a falsely casual shrug. She hung up. Elizabeth, was she annoyed that it was you calling her? It didn't help, but she sounded pretty bothered before I even said anything. Basically, she told me unless the police, firefighters, an ambulance, or your mom's needed her, that I should tell you to talk to her when you were home. And that she didn't want to tell me anything. Ah. A crease began to form in your forehead. Your sister wasn't happy, and you couldn't shake the horrible feeling that it wasn't just her usual bad attitude. The hall felt cramped, and suddenly you were uncomfortable being surrounded by these walls. Derek watched you helplessly. His fingers tensed. Clenching and splaying again. A moment passed, then he let out a heavy breath. He wasn't powerless anymore. I have a plan. You do? Derek sprinted through the living area and into his bedroom. The clatter of drawers opening and papers flying came through his open door. He slowly stepped to the edge of the hall, trying to glimpse what was happening on the other side of the condo. He soon came bounding out again, clearly successful at something. Derek tossed a sack of colorful folded pamphlets across the surface of the coffee table. You jogged over to meet him there. You couldn't tell what they were from a distance. Let's bring the party to Elizabeth. These are bus schedules and stuff. I've only got to look at what the times are and we can leave. Why do you have those? He chuckled mischievously. It's good to be prepared. And I did wonder about this kind of thing before. I can't exactly drive, but what if there was an accident or an emergency or whatever and I needed to be someplace right away? I already know a lot of public transportation stuff because of that. Derek began to shuffle the papers around, and he flashed you a bright grin. But I didn't think I'd be pulling this out so I could go see Elizabeth of all people. Derek laughed lightheartedly over the joke. The words didn't feel very breezy to you. That's because, if he was honest, it wasn't about your sister. He'd spent time studying ways to get to Sunset Bird for his friends. Or Cove. And for you. With you and him living away from each other and not going to the same school, sometimes it seems like maybe you stopped being a piece of his life once he left your town. This proved you definitely didn't disappear for Derek. He cared about you even when you weren't there, and you could count on him even more than you had known. While you were stuck inside your own head, Derek had his nose in the brochures. He pressed his palms on the table, fervently scanned the timetables, and rambled more about his scheme. There isn't a direct line to Sunset Bird. It's kind of a small place. We can take a bus to a real station and get on a smaller shuttle for tourists. Derek's hands lifted from and then hit the smooth surface under him, making a solid smack noise. He was done searching. His gaze flicked up to your face. Is that okay? Thanks, Derek. Alright. We can leave a note for Mom about what happened, or... Derek packed up the pamphlets, sticking them in the crook of his arm. He twisted his head behind him, but whispered to you covertly over his shoulder. If it makes you feel better, we might be able to get back before she even knows. We should tell her. Yeah. One sec. I'm a responsible being. Derek dashed to the back room with all of the bus schedules in his arms. He shoved them into something, then ran out to rejoin you at the front of the condo with the bag swung over his shoulder. Next, he went to the kitchen to grab a notepad and a pen from the counter. He hopped up to his tiptoes to lean over it and scribbled a few rows of explanation on the paper. He jabbed the button to retract the pen nib with his thumb and set it down alongside the note. Let's do it. Right. You scooped up your own backpack and the two of you locked the now empty apartment behind you. At a brisk pace, Derek led the way out of the condo complex and down the city sidewalks. You had to weave through crowds of people making their own way across town. Most of them were much older and taller than you were. Between the mass of strangers and the immense skyscrapers bearing down on you from all sides, you felt like a very small part of a far bigger world. You held Derek's arms. He shifted the way it hung to make his elbow easier to hook around. That gave you the reassurance you hoped it would. You were in this together. You pushed forward until you reached the nearest bus stop. A group had already gathered in the same spot for the same purpose. Derek didn't fight to reach the front of the pack. He just kept to the fringes. You waited for anywhere from 5 minutes to 50 minutes. It was pretty impossible to track time accurately when you felt every single sluggish second hit you like a brick. No matter how long it actually was, it was enough time to think. A part of you had felt as though you couldn't possibly seriously get on a bus and go back to Sunset Bird without any of your parents. That just wouldn't happen. That was probably why you went along with Derek's impulse as quickly as the idea had struck him. But reality hit you like a bus when an actual bus turned a corner and came your way. You gave Derek's arm another squeeze. He responded by tugging you a little bit closer to him. The massive vehicle hit its brakes and slowed down to a halt. The doors opened to let those who'd arrived at their destination, to let out those who'd arrived at their destination and accept new riders. Alright, so when we reach the end of this one, I'm going to save and we're going to be done for the day. But I am going to finish this one. The crowd jostled together and filtered through and from the door. And you and Derek went in at the tail end of the group. You had enough change in your pocket to pay the fare. Derek flashed a bus pass for his entry. The city bus was as overflowing with people as the streets were. You had to shuffle while turned to your side to get through the aisle without knocking into the arms or legs of the other passengers. There was barely enough space to breathe. Humid summer days had never been more miserable. You couldn't even find seats that were side by side. Instead, you had to settle for 2 aisle seats that were across the way and 1 row diagonal from each other. That meant you had to let go of Derek, which was the worst of all. The automatic doors creakily swung closed. You rocked as the wheels began to turn. Despite what was going on, it was exciting to be there. You twisted around in your seat trying to look out the window. It was a brand new experience for you. Derek didn't attempt to start a conversation, not that he really could in the hectic space with the distance between you. He had become completely focused on watching for your stop. He had a destination he needed to get you to, and he was going to do it no matter what. He's a man on a mission. More stops passed by until eventually Derek leaned his chest over this open space to send a quick message. His tone was breathy, like a whisper, but way too loud to be really whispering. This is it. He shifted upright immediately and tugged the bell, marking this as a stop for the driver. Well, hello! We're in the midst of a going to see if my sister's okay sleepover for Father's Day thing mission with my friend Derek. Soon the bus came to a cautious halt along the edge of the curb. Once at full stop, the doors popped open and you repeated the awkward shimmy through the aisle so you could exit. When your feet landed on the cracked ground next to you, you exhaled in satisfaction. You'd made it. This is really good. On Derek's first step into the station, he pulled out one of the brochures from his pocket and flipped it open. He must have kept that single pamphlet with the necessary details when packing the rest away from the collection. Derek was prepared as always. He held it up to his face, mapping out the station and using the guide like a treasure hunter. You wandered around the wide open floor plan, searching up and down for the section where shuttles would load passengers. You were the first one to spot the one vehicle headed towards a tiny tourist town. It made you stop in place. Derek. Yeah? At the sound of his name, he lifted his face above the station map and saw what you saw. Oh! The shuttle was barely 1/4 of the size of the bus. It was a glorified van. You only recognized it for what it was, thanks for the unusual pale orange paint job, and also the word shuttle painted in blue across the doors. He tucked up the bus schedule pamphlet into his back pocket and gave you a thumbs up. Derek bought tickets at a nearby customer service counter. There was no humoring the possibility of you buying your own ticket or paying for both. That wasn't a hill to die on today. Then you were ready for another ride. This one was much longer than I thought it would be. You poked your head inside the cabin. Only a handful of other travelers were nestled between the 4 rows of seats. From the seat cushions to the smell, the shuttle was immediately more agreeable than the bus. You were even able to get spots side by side this time. Derek, though, wasn't in any more of a mood to talk. The physical atmosphere might have improved, but the discomfort he felt on the inside was still eating at him. You could only sit in silence. For all the gnawing tension, you did make it. The shuttle inevitably came to its stop in a Sunset Bird parking lot. The car was switched off and the driver gave permission for guests to leave. While the other riders leisurely shuffled around, bags set by their feet, and readjusted their hats, you and Derek hopped right off into freedom. Derek took a couple stumbling steps after his leap from the car, and then he stood in place. He watched your next move, counting on your guidance to finish the journey. It was time to switch roles. Sunset Bird was your turf, not his. You spun in a single circle, scanning the areas for clues as to which of the multiple big, flat, mostly empty parking lots you'd landed in. When you swung back around, you got a glimpse behind the shuttle and spotted the corner of the grocery store. You couldn't have been closer to home. It's that way. You began to drift towards the main street, making eye contact with Derek over your shoulder in the hopes that he'd come with you. Awesome! Nice work, Lane. He made a break for it and launched across the blacktop. You ran with him. There was no time to lose. Derek was so fixated he might actually leave you in the dust if you didn't push yourself. You flew out of the parking lot and dashed down the sidewalk you'd seen a million times before. From there it was a turn into the residential area. Before you knew it, you'd arrived at the top of the hill on your street. You were so close. The decline of the road propelled your steps even faster. Derek almost crashed into you when you both dove towards the entryway of your house. You caught yourself by bracing your hands against the front door. It took a second for you to separate your stinging palms from the wood so you could get your key out, but you got it in the lock, turned the key, and pulled. Finally, huffing and puffing, you stumbled inside. You were home. After everything, you almost didn't know what to expect when you laid your eyes on the scene. But it was your living room, and it was exactly as it was every day of your life. Not a single thing was out of place. The low hum of the fridge was the only sound. Elizabeth clearly hadn't torn the house apart in an emotional rampage, although you didn't know what her own room looked like. Lane? You snapped your head to the sound, and there she was, standing on the first step of the stairs, Elizabeth. Her mouth remained open, despite not saying anything else. An eyebrow was arched high on her forehead. Hi! Hi? Wait, is that what you were calling for? To tell me you were coming back way early? We're just gonna tell her we were worried. We were worried you may have been upset about Father's Day and feeling alone and like I abandoned you, and I didn't want you to feel abandoned. My friend was feeling like maybe I would be upset, and so he took me to his house, but we forgot about you, and I'm sorry. There was no point in beating around the bush, not after how much you went through to do what you did. Me and Derek wanted to see if you were okay because you were alone here on Father's Day. She let out a single derisive bark of laughter, and more was threatening to spill out. It wasn't the worst reaction you could have gotten, all things considered. How'd that even come up? The tip of Derek's foot scuffed the wooden floor Ma kept sparkling clean. He meekly confessed his part in the debacle. I wanted Lane to spend the night at my place so I could make sure they weren't sad or something. That's what I was hoping for anyway, but it wasn't a great plan. He couldn't help sneaking a shy glance at you. The mocking humor that colored her face was wiped away. In an absolutely deadpan way, she said 2 words. That's adorable. It was enough to end the conversation. Derek had no comeback, and your sister simply stared blankly. Was this a mistake? Should we not have come? A seriously uncomfortable 3-way staring contest commenced. You kept your focus locked on your sister. She did the same to you. Derek flip-flopped between Elizabeth and you. Then Elizabeth caved. She pinched the bridge of her nose and groaned dramatically. fine. You kids win. Today was annoying. Not because I care that I only get to have 2 moms. I can't celebrate Daddy Day. It's because every year everybody else is busy and I'm stuck doing nothing. And so no, I wasn't in a sunshine and rainbows kind of mood. It didn't help that you ended up getting off that boat either. And then he called me. She whipped an accusatory finger right at Derek's chest. This guy was able to throw you a party out of nowhere and decided that he was going to give me a ring while I was stuck in the house like a loser. Rude. That's why I hung up. Her smirk returned, much more earnest than before. I didn't think you were going to race across the city to come keep me company. That kind of affectionate teasing from your older sister only warmed your heart. It was special, and all the discomfort was worth it. You could already tell today was going to be something to laugh about for years to come. Derek remained serious. He blinked in rapid succession and mustered up the will to continue his regretful appeal. Elizabeth, I'm really sorry for not thinking about this more. Elizabeth cut that right off. She swished her hand in front of her face, trying to physically bat away Derek's sentiment. Don't be, please. Save your energy. She settled the tips of her fingers against the center of her forehead, her other hand resting on her hip that she jutted out to the side. It's not your job to babysit me. You're not my big brother, and I'm not the one you like. Elizabeth was as sassy as ever, and Derek's overly self-reflective maturity seemed childish when cast in that light. A dark red blush grew across Derek's cheeks, but he smiled. It was a good reminder that he demanded a lot more from himself than others did. As if for the first time, your sister appraised you and Derek, huddled together, sweaty and frumpy from the journey. Oh dear, where are my manners? I've got guests and I haven't even offered them a drink. She shrugged one arm while sashaying over to the kitchen and opening the fridge. Not very politely, Elizabeth shouted out while sticking her head into the chilled shelves. What do you want? Just water, please. Thanks. Orange juice. A water and orange juice. She set a bottle of water and a container of orange juice promptly on the counter. When her hands were free, she reached back into the fridge to snag a carton of tropical juice as well as 2 glasses. Elizabeth poured a glass of juice for herself and filled a glass of orange juice for you too. One more time, Elizabeth, the demure hostess that she was, shouted at you from the kitchen. Come and get it! She punctuated the statement by bumping the fridge door shut with her hip, then she walked back to the living room, taking a sip of her juice. Derek took it upon himself to pick up both of your drinks. He went straight to the kitchen, grabbed the drinks, and then returned to offer you yours. You accepted it from him. Thanks. It made your sister snicker over the rim of her glass. Her gaze stayed on you while she lowered herself slowly to sit on the floor. You shared a quick look with Derek, but ultimately joined your sister on the ground. The 3 of you arranged yourselves in a small circle shape, each with your little drink in hand. It almost felt like being a kid in kindergarten again. Elizabeth lifted her cup out over the center of the group. To this auspicious occasion, cheers to us! As sarcastic as her tone was, the fun she was having was genuine. Happy other Mother's Day. Cheers. He thrust his own drink out in celebration before bringing it back towards his chest. He twisted the cap off the water bottle and gulped down about half of it in one go. Derek idly wiped his mouth when Elizabeth asked a flat question. How did you actually get here? Is Miss Suarez idling in her minivan out there? Derek's reply was perfectly cheery. After the long way there, his spark was finally coming back. Nope, we took a bus. A bus? And a shuttle. None of the buses go straight into Sunset Bird, but we made it. Well, obviously you can see that. Okay, another question. Are you going to be completely grounded for this? We left a note for my mom. She'll understand. This was an emergency. Or it could have been one. Huh. We were on a mission. Elizabeth rested her eyes shut and took another long sip of juice. I won't tell our moms. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Let's make Father's Day cards. What? We can still celebrate the holiday. I want to make our moms a card. That's a great idea, Lane. I'll do it. The three of you ran around the house, gathering supplies and dumping them on the living room floor. Stickers, markers, and stacks of construction paper were littered all around you. You added decorations and a message for your special Father's Day card. Elizabeth wrote on it in cursive, and Derek added a smiley face. You really felt like a kid again. It was a nice time, and it resulted in a lovely homemade card. When you were really finished, Elizabeth spoke up. "All right, you've got to go." She stretched her legs and arms, spreading out wide. "Being bored all day is going to be the least of our worries if Mom's come in and you've magically appeared in the living room." "Bye, Elizabeth." She snatched up the cards for your mom and waved it in her hand. "I'll make sure they get this after you've come home for real. They never know you were here." Her eyes narrowed, looking between you and Derek. "Enjoy what's left of your little sleepover." "Yeah, Big Sis loves us. And she was in a bad mood and she was touched that we came home. It was great." Derek's mouth dropped open fruitlessly, and then he closed it again. He didn't know what to say to that. Finally, he waved and chirped out a generic farewell. "Bye, Elizabeth." "See you around." Hug. Elizabeth rolled her eyes in staged annoyance. She couldn't take the smile off of her face, and she ultimately returned the gestures, wrapping her arms around your neck. "Bye." With your mission accomplished, the two of you returned to the wide open world. Returning to the parking lot was far more a leisurely trip than your arrival had been. There was time before it'd take off again. You drifted ahead, like the lazy white clouds above you. The fluffiness of them made you think of marshmallows. The pale orange 12-seater came into sight, parked at the far edge of the lot. You and Derek got your tickets to ride and hopped on. A few scattered tourists in their sun hat and floral patterned shorts were seated throughout the cabin. The small number of people in the space still felt cramped because of the limited room in the car. You could smell their sunscreen in the air. In a slow, curving motion, the shuttle pulled out. Derek sat rigidly, silently tapping his pointer fingers against the top of his knees for the entire trip. No words were exchanged by anyone except a few rules and updates mumbled out by the drivers. People were tired from their own long adventures out in the world. You could only imagine what the strangers sharing the shuttle had been through, while barely audible acoustic guitar tracks played on the radio. Eventually the shuttle arrived. Each person went their separate ways except for you and Derek, who stayed by one another's side as a pair. Having navigated the station with maps, he kept tucked in his back pocket as a guide. And finally you sat down in the deep blue, well-worn fabric of a city bus seat for the last ride. When the bus pulled out this time, Derek wiped his brow with his wristband. You'd made it back to Derek's city. No mortifying calls would have to be made from an overpriced bus stop payphone to beg for one of your parents to come and get you. Derek slipped lower in his seat and stretched his legs out in the aisle. The bus wasn't even half full, so making a little extra room for himself wasn't getting in anyone's way this time. On the outside, the sun was still dipping under the horizon, giving the air relief from its sweltering heat. It all came together to make the metal tube of the public transportation less suffocating. Totally incomparable to the experience you had at the height of the afternoon. Now, it was safe to relax. "Good job, us," he chirped with a mixture of relief and fulfillment, like you'd just had an 8-hour shift at a serious adult company. "I really appreciate all of this, you know." Derek made a big show of swatting his hand nonchalantly, which pretty much completely precluded it from being a casual gesture. The grin on his face couldn't even pretend to be unaffected. He was thrilled. "No worries, Lane. Siblings look out for siblings." And he looked directly at you. "Friends look out for friends." We're a good team. The best team. Looking out the window. Your gaze flowed along with the passing scenery that consisted of Main Street packed with other cars. Derek's eyes fluttered closed with a sweet sigh. You were settled in for the final leg of the journey, and all you had to do was wait. There was a soft vibration in the back of the bus. It slowly went up your spine and all the way down to the tips of your toes. During the ride before, the sensation had frayed at your nerves. Now it was soothing. With every stop that passed, your eyelids grew heavier. Yours wasn't just the fourth one. Just down the line, you might have fallen asleep. I understand. Bus so comfy. Sleep so easy on bus. You and Derek were the only ones who got off at that point. The two of you hopped from the front door of the bus onto the sidewalk. Derek leisurely retraced the familiar path you had gone on with him, matching step for step. It was peaceful, and with how close he had been to dozing off, it almost felt like walking through a dream. I know! It's the bus! The bus curse afflict sleep! Don't fall asleep on the bus. You'll get stuck. They managed to stay alive and not asleep. It's great. Finally, you arrived at the Suarez condo after a long, eventful afternoon away. You may not have lived there, but seeing that door made you feel welcomed and safe. Derek clicked his key into the slot and pulled the handle forward. Any traces of sleepiness that lingered in your eyes were instantly wiped away. Derek unavoidably tripped the wire on a mini explosion. Derek's back! The condo wasn't nearly as empty as it had been when you'd left. The whole rest of the family had arrived before you. They were gathered together on the couch and bar stools, except for Nicholas, who had jumped to his feet to launch himself at his brother. His short arms circled around Derek's legs. It was an interaction that had happened dozens, maybe even hundreds of times before. That was the hallmark of their own unique sibling relationship. Derek fulfilled his part of the tradition and stroked Nicholas's hair. At the same time, he offered the rest of his family a laid-back greeting. Hey! Good evening to the both of you! Hi! Welcome back. There was a knowing lilt to her tone and a crook in her smile. Did you have a good trip? Clutched securely between her fingers was a piece of paper. You didn't have to think too hard to guess what it was. The note you'd left explaining what happened. Yes. What a day. It's best you were able to spend time with family. His parents were both perfectly contented. You had their full support going on an adventure. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. It was good. Derek gratefully replied to his parents, all the while sneaking a warm gaze at you. I'm glad I got to see Elizabeth. Wonderful. Nicholas simply held tight to Derek's jeans the entire time, happy he was there and totally unaware of what the older people were talking about. Jorge stood in between his parents with his arms pressed to his sides. He had been listening with amusement. His thin eyebrows pinched and his lips pursed. Now what? Mrs. Suarez snickered cheekily, resting her actual cheek against Mr. Suarez. Well, I'm sorry to say you better turn right back around and go back the way you came. It's time to bring Lane home. But don't worry, I'll drive. Yeah. With a wink and a grin, Derek scratched the back of his head. He chuckled right along with his mom. You had a great time staying with the Suarez family, but we're very much looking forward to seeing your own moms and being reunited with your own sibling after a humorously short time apart. There would be plenty more moments of fun and laughter to come when you were. Thanks to Derek, it was truly an occasion worth commemorating. Alrighty. Alrighty. That's going to be it for this stream. Thank you for showing up whenever you did. I appreciate you being here. I'm happy you were here. Until the next time our signals cross, I hope you have a wonderful time and are happy exactly where you are.